Welcome back to the Motivational Intelligence Podcast, where we talk about the third and most important category of intelligence that doubles the electrical activity in the brain and enables ordinary people to do extraordinary things. I'm Sean Johnson. Today we're sharing an appearance from Joe Gianni on the Mindful Impact Podcast. In this conversation, Joe talks about his yearly goal-setting process, how he prepares his mind for the day each morning, the values that guide our lives, and much, much more. So I think it's a conversation that you'll really enjoy from a person outside of our purview. Next week, we have a really special episode coming with a Super Bowl champion, and I will leave it at that for now. But until then, please enjoy this episode and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this if you've been picking up some useful tips from us in the past few weeks. Until next time, please enjoy.
The Motivational Intelligence Podcast is produced by the team at 2Logical. 2Logical is an international corporate training firm and the world's leading expert in motivational intelligence, which is the ability to understand, manage, and change the motives people have. 2Logical offers over 30 different keynotes, workshops, and full training courses to small, medium, and large Fortune 500 companies in 53 countries, a lot of which you're probably familiar with. Pfizer, Bank of America, GE, Constellation Brands, P&G, and more. All solutions are completely customized, and the feedback from these sessions will blow your mind. If you have any training or speaking needs or just want to say hey, head over to 2logical.com.
All right. Joe, first off, thank you again so much for actually, I'm at your place today recording this. For the first time, I'm at somebody else's home court recording a podcast. So thank you, Joe. I appreciate having me here.
You're welcome, Justin. Yeah, I've been looking forward to seeing you and spending some time together.
Yeah, thank you. So the question I want to start off with to get this thing rolling is I'm curious to know, and for people listening, I've been in the office here for an hour or so now. We've been just chatting about different topics, different subjects. But I want to know what really sets you off in the morning, meaning in a good way. So what makes your heart sing when you wake up today in your life? What is it that gets you super happy and ready to go?
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, I established a self-talk to myself when I was a very, very young man. And it starts, when I shave in the morning, and particularly when I get in the car and I'm driving. And it's a simple question. I say, Joe, what is it that you're so fired up about, that you're so absolutely over the top about, that it's going to emotionally move you to be the best Joe Gianni you can be today? And if I can't answer that question when I'm halfway to work, I just turn around and go home. In other words, we have to have a passion and a purpose for what it is that we're going to do every day. Otherwise, we're going to just be one of the millions of people that are just, part of the pack. I've never, I don't live life with being part of the pack in any aspect of life. But it all starts, it was a great question. It all starts with, what do I think about? Every morning I think about what is it today that I'm going to accomplish? What is it today that I'm going to do that's going to really emotionally move me to put it out there and push myself to be the best that I can be? And that question is not just when I say, I do it in the morning and as I'm heading to work, but it's not just about the work day. It's about all aspects of the day. So it's about going to work. It's about maybe meeting some friends, at the end of the day, or it's about, playing, doing a hobby, or it's about, coming home and spending time with the family.
That's really good. That's interesting. So that when you do that, is that something you think about the night before a little bit, or do you just kind of put your head on the pillow and then in the morning you'll decide? Well, what that's going to be?
Again, being highly schooled and trained, obviously I always spend time thinking about what I'm going to do the next day. It enables you to sleep better. Anybody out there listening, if you want to have a better night's sleep, take the time to really think about what you're going to be doing tomorrow in terms of tasks. But this is a little bigger. This is a little bit bigger thinking. What I mean by that is what it's going to emotionally move me to be the best I can sits on top of a backdrop. And that backdrop is a vision of the life that I want to build, which is organized at the beginning of every year in, year out, and has been for decades.
a yearly vision of where you want to be that year, goals, those kind of things you're talking about?
Correct, yeah. As you and I have chatted before, every year, every day for that matter, we all have the opportunity, we all have the ability to recreate ourselves and recreate ourselves to be a bigger, better self. And most people don't know that they just need to give themselves permission to do that and be that. They just need to sit back and really, truly think about who they are, who they've become, what it's served them in terms of their life, every aspect of their life, professionally, personally, relationships, business relationships, family relationships, and then recognize they have an opportunity to, through the process of goal setting, to really reestablish what it is that they want to do this year. Who do I want to be as a father? Who do I want to be as a leader of a company? Who do I want to be as a consultant to the massive companies that we deal with every year? Who do I want to be to my coworkers every single day? Every year we have the opportunity to reinvent ourselves, but we're not taught that in K through 12. We're not taught that most of the time in our family upbringings, most of us. We're not taught that in higher education. But yet that's really the opportunity that we all have every year. So when you ask me, what do I ask myself or what do I say, I gave you my opening statement, but it's completely sits on a backdrop of a lot of thought each time for the year.
I love that. What comes to mind is like, instead of just constantly focusing on how much I want to make or how many employees I want to have or what I want to buy or what I want to do or what vacation I want to go on, you're talking about like emotionally and your presence of how am I going to show up for my wife this year? How am I going to show up for my kids? That's different than last year. And it really is kind of a breath of fresh air to hear something like that because when you say giving permission, I totally can resonate with that because I've had to give myself permission to change, to not change, like be a better person than I was the year before. Yeah. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. I love that you said that. That's okay to realize that, we're always improving and we always can. And you used the word rebirth earlier, which I really liked that word. Yeah. That was really cool before we got on here.
Justin, every year scientists create these telescopes and they look out into space. And one of the biggest things that they realize, no matter how powerful they make these telescopes, they realize one simple thing: there's more space. The same is true with the progressive realization of becoming the best that we can be. In other words, we become the best that we can be, but in that journey, you realize there is no end. And so that's why every year we have the opportunity to become better this year than we were the year before, and then actually do something about it. So that's the first main thing to keep in mind. And we don't become better the new year by just wishing it. We become better by being eclectic, by actually sitting back and really thinking about not just one aspect of life, but all aspects of life. I've coached, through my career journey, had the honor and the distinct pleasure of coaching lots of people. So much of coaching them is in their professional side of their careers, the professional side of their life, their careers. But every time I've helped people to explode their companies, explode their career track, it's been because I've helped them to explode their life. And that's a big difference. Exploding a life means helping people to get eclectic, to use their power to become great, not just at work, not just in terms of earning income, but in terms of every role that they have in life, everything that they're going to do. So if they're a father, to work and use principles to become the best at being a father this year, better than they were last year. If they're a mother, to be a better mother this year than they were last year. They want to make more money, great. Become a better professional, provide more service to their clients this year than they did last year. It's universal, but how many times you and I meet people that they got it really going on in one aspect of life, one area of life. You'd be afraid to compete with them, but the rest of their life is just a pile of you know what. And There's reasons for that. There's a cause and effect functionality of that. And 99% of the time when I meet people like that, it's not that they want their life to be that. It's that they've not been helped to see that the same principles that enabled them to overcome, to persevere, to fight their demons and win every day in their careers is the same application they need to put into their personal life in the other roles of their life. And if they do that, they will eventually create what I call, a round circle of life. And that's what makes them unstoppable. That's what makes people build a powerful, exuberant life, which, is the language of the soul. Everybody wants that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. The one thing that comes to mind is if I'm approaching somebody like that, or if I'm putting myself in the shoes of somebody like that, I guess number one excuse would be I don't have time to also perfect that part of my life. Right. Does that make sense? Yeah. How does somebody use that just practicality in our life?
Sure.
To go about
this? Again, and I'm sure your listeners, like the folks throughout the world that my company trains, that's a very common thing. I mean, how do I do that? Well, first off, the truth of the matter is that you have to get organized and goal-directed and put things into a priority. We don't metamorphose and become the most we can be in all aspects of life all at one time. It happens, first off, to understand that we have the opportunity to do that. Two, to understand what is the steps, the tools, if you will, that will enable you or you or I to do that. And then the third thing is to recognize that we have to put more energy into certain aspects of life, certain areas of life, maybe, than other areas. But every time when we realize that we're doing it for the whole circle, every time we put that energy in, the more applicable we're going to be able to do it in other areas of life. So, for example, if somebody comes to me and, their career, they're struggling, it's caused now marital issues, it's caused, problems with their financial, et cetera, as much as I would love to coach them on the holistic, and I set the stage, that backdrop I'm talking about, that of what life can be. But then my energy with them and my energy in guiding them to put their energy is to fix what's causing the beginning of the chain reaction, if it's dire enough. Do you see what I'm trying to get at? So if it's dire enough. So there are things that have to take a priority and a precedent. But over time, when a person is literally living a life through goal direction, and they're looking to strive every year to be better this year than they were last year, and they're setting goals in every area of life, over time it gets easier and easier and easier and easier and easier, because it's the underlying principles that they're applying in every aspect of their life that enables them to reach their full potential in that aspect of life.
That makes total sense. And I did your 2-day motivational intelligence training here recently, and now having the honor of sitting down here with the owner, Joe, who's created that. I remember it all starts with our beliefs, right? Our beliefs. And can you talk about more on that process for the audience here? Because before we actually, before we came on, I was talking about values and beliefs, and Joe was explaining how they kind of go hand in hand. You have to have, and it was really interesting, and I almost want him to not repeat what he said, but go into that even a little more in depth about how important that is, because you just mentioned we have to figure out ourselves in the beginning stage, like why are we this way, and it all starts with our beliefs, right?
Yeah.
And how can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, let me take a dabble at it. I think that, in the realm of, what we today in the corporate development world call motivational intelligence, it's bringing people to an understanding quickly that each and every one of us is who we are and where we are, attracting a certain level of results in our life, every aspect of our lives, not based on a randomness, not based on chance, but based upon who we've become. In other words, what we believe about ourselves, what we believe we're capable of, what we believe we're worthy of. Virtually all of us are in a level of results in life based upon the prior programming that we've had up till this point in time in our lives. Mm-hmm. And most people they don't really understand that. They, again, as I said, it's not taught in most families from this perspective. It's not taught in K through 12. It's not taught in higher education. But yet the biggest thing that sets people free in life is when they have the right set of beliefs about themselves, about their life, about their potential, about their abilities to take control and build their life. The thing that stops people is when they don't understand that. So, the reason why it's so important to take people to that level very quickly in coaching them or teaching them or training them is because if you don't, no matter how much strategy you give them, no matter how much process you give them, no matter how much technique you give them, they, one, either won't master the technique or the process, or even more so, they just won't execute on it consistently every single day. And so as a trainer, as a coach, as folks like us really committed to helping people, you can't really help them if you start at what I would call, and I don't mean this in a condescending or a negative way, but at a superficial level. It's got to be in helping people to really understand, what do they think about themselves, say as a salesperson? What do they think of themselves as a service person if that's their role? What do they think or believe about themselves as a father? What do they think or believe about themselves as a mother? What do they really truly think and believe of themselves as a friend? So you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
And when you help people early in the journey to get them to start to realize that there is a much more substantial level that needs to be studied and looked at, not judged, just simply looked at, that you really open people up to really taking full control of their future. And they know it. They see it the minute you start talking to them like that. That's what I'm sure you sense every time we talk.
Yeah, I love talking to you. And you know what's really cool about talking to you?
Well, it's because you're crazy. And so
it's because I'm a little less. It's I like when we can put in a couple of jokes when it's serious conversation, because it's really hard to actually do that sometimes when you start getting deep. And it's cool because I think one of the things that as we go through a process of improving ourselves, we almost start to feel entitlement and like we're better than the next person because we're becoming better and they're not, or they're not becoming better as fast. So, and you, for somebody that's been doing this for 30 plus years, right? I mean, you obviously what you're talking about. You could easily come from a hierarchical standpoint and talk as like, what is it? You guys use this term? I learned it. Really, bigger to little. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Big person, bigger.
Big person. Well, how about I ask you? What's the wrong way to come across? And
big person, little.
Big person, little is the wrong way.
Yep. As opposed to big person, bigger.
Big person, bigger, and that, and you can totally tell that you oblige by that. I mean, you live that big person, bigger, because I feel comfortable. I feel like I know. You know a ton, and you've done a lot, but you don't talk to me as if I'm like stupid, to put it in one sense, which a lot of people can come across that way when they believe that about themselves, right? Or so I want to say that's really like impressive, and I think that a lot of people could learn from that, including myself. I'm trying to, and I'm really glad I took that class because it helps me realize how I do talk to people or how I come across. That was really good. So that lost my train of thought of a question I was going to ask you.
I think you were asking the question, how do you do, or why do you see it that way? Why do you think that way?
How do you think that way?
And I think it's a very powerful question, and an important question in that the reason why I think that way is for a couple of reasons. One is because I'm paying it forward. In other words, I had phenomenal parents that didn't talk down to what I wasn't, but always talked about who I was or who I was becoming. They didn't use those words because they weren't professional trainers, but no ifs, ands, or buts, that's that. I had a circle of close friends that, same exact thing. We were, as a close-knit group, really starting in a neighborhood in Long Island, New York. It was not one of what you weren't. It was always about who you were and what your dreams were and who you were going to become. Right out of college, I had a phenomenal mentor that taught me salesmanship at an extreme level, but he taught me really life at an extreme level. So, and to this day is still my mentor. So, so because of those experiences, it created an internal belief system that causes me to not look at people as to who they're not, but to always look at people at who they are and who they have the ability to become. And the more time I spend with people, the more they share with me who they want to become, the more I get into that with them. So it's never one through the eyes of what people aren't or judgment. It's always through the eyes of, that's awesome who this person is. I wonder if they're dreaming about being something more next year. I wonder if they'd like to, have, do, and become more in their life in the future. Or if they, are they done?
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot of that. I hearken back to, another thing, and it's directly related, a little bit off the beaten path for a second. But, I remember being a child growing up, and my mother was an amazing woman, and she had just enormous life insight. And one of the things was, I remember I came home one day and I was upset at one of the kids at school, and and I was like, this kid, da, 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 da. And my mother looked at me and she said, well, son, she goes, it's going to be easy in life to love the lovable people that you meet through your lifetime. She said, but the real test of your character and the real test of the man that one day you'll become will be your ability to love the people who are not lovable. And I never forgot that, since I was told that when I was a very young kid. I was probably 10 years old, but I really understood it. And I was in an environment where my family lived that way. There was no judgment of, one neighbor who didn't have the money to mow their lawn versus the other neighbor that, had it pristine. There just was none of that. So it built in me, when I step back and look at it, a different lens. And when you and I meet people, and you've lived enough life experience, you'll meet people, and the more your eyes are calibrated the way I'm talking about, you instantaneously can see from what perspective, what lens they're looking at you at. You can see what lens and what perspective are they looking at other people at, just in a group setting even. It doesn't mean, when you and I develop that lens that we're better than the person that doesn't have that lens. There's just, difference in effectiveness.
Effectiveness is a good word. Yeah. That's great. And you talked about, what came to mind when you were talking about all this is looking at, I'm big on working on being the best husband that I can, honestly. So you were saying all assets of life, being the best husband, being the best father, and that's kind of taken precedent over this year. So previously, to give a little background here, I always wanted to be the best businessman I could be, right? I wanted to be the best at earning money that I could be. And it's kind of taken a back seat this year. And where I'm finding my balance now is being the best husband, being the best father, being the best friend is something new that I'm working on. Being the best, and now also the best in my career, what I want to do, my path. Yep. So finding that balance is cool, and I'm glad you talked about that. But when it comes to being a great husband, you were talking about seeing the good stuff about somebody, and not focusing on the things they aren't doing, or focusing. And that was really cool when you said that, because I immediately applied that to my relationship. Yep. Right. And you probably do that with your wife, and when you come from that lens and that point of view, I think there's a lot less suffering. I guess there's a lot less to argue about. Right. And it's really cool if you can put yourself in that place more often than not. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. That was a good tool for sure.
Yeah. I think that, your listeners and, I'm sure there's many things that, again, you have totally in common with them, and they have in common with you. Some of them, their focus is to grow their business this year. Some of them is to grow their business, but also to work on their wheel, so to speak. They want to become a stronger spouse. They want to become a better father. And the formula, if you will, is really the same. It's what you followed, what you shared with me about, getting around people that, had extreme knowledge and really truly befriending them and getting them to share that knowledge was really a big part of your strategy in terms of, excelling your career. But the same is true in our lives, in all aspects of our lives, our personal lives. So, for example, if you and I want to become a better father, then we want to begin to surround ourselves with people we have befriended over the years that you never maybe even thought much about, but they have great kids and they're really, really great fathers. And you can do the same thing with them that you and I do with business. You can go and say, hey, I want to buy you a beer and I just want to talk about parenting. I mean, especially if you know someone, they've never had you ask that question before. They'll think you're, well, what? Are you okay? You feeling all right? But the same exact principles. In other words, in order for us to get begin to get a vision of the next person we want to be, the next level of person that you and I want to become, the quickest way, just like in business, is to get around people who are at levels that you and I aspire to be at. And then having the wherewithal to just break it down, unpack it. You hear a lot of on the pod, we're going to unpack it. And it's true. Yeah. Most people don't really even understand what the hell they're unpacking. But you can unpack anything, especially outside of business. So you and I see someone that they're just phenomenal friendships. They have phenomenal, if you become a student of people and you say, I want to become a better friend. Well, you can just look at people who everywhere they go, you could tell there's a difference. There's a meaningful relationship and friendship there. And when you see those people, if that's on your backdrop list of who you want to become better at this year, you and I now know to pay attention and say, hey, can I buy you lunch? Yeah, most people will stop for a lunch, right? And you can even share with them why. Say, hey, look, I'm really working on this year. One of my big goals is to become better as a friend. I'm just picking these things randomly, right? And then just have conversations with them about that. Because what you'll see is anytime you and I see someone that's in a place in life, a station in life that you and I aspire to be at, they're not there randomly. They're there just the way I said a few minutes ago, which is every single person you and I meet is who they are and where they are and attracting a certain level of result in their life, not based on randomness, but based upon who they've become. And who they've become is a collection of their beliefs in that aspect of life. And so those beliefs is what causes them to act and behave a certain way. And that certain way causes them to consistently yield a key result, a result that you and I are after.
Right. And is it as simple as saying to somebody, because, that requires a little bit of vulnerability. It requires a little bit of putting the ego at the door and allowing yourself to ask for help, right? And I'm going to ask this question in a second because I want to go back what we said way earlier about goal setting in the beginning of the year. What you were saying is probably the reason why the gym is filled up for all of January and then the parking lot shrinks back down to its normal size in February, because a lot of people are focusing on just those goals without first figuring out their why and themselves and unpacking that, right?
Yes.
So maybe a new goal for people should be get with somebody that could help me unpack my shit and figure out who I am and why I am doing the things that I'm doing. And then that sounds like that should be more people's goals. Right?
More of their focus.
In
their goal setting.
In their goal setting. There we go.
That's exactly right. So even in helping people in their professional life, go back, we'll toggle back and forth. Yeah. Therein lies the demarcation or the enormous differential of Too Logical and what we've been doing for 30 years in major companies across industry. Because, in the formal corporate training world, they call them IDPs, individual development plans. Every year, if companies are well run, they develop IDPs with their employees. But 98 to 99% of the IDP is skill-based, process-based, strategy-based, or action-based, as opposed to belief-based. And yet the things that stop people from executing is when they don't have the right beliefs. So you are exactly right. The unpacking of the process or the skill, this is the mechanics for this skill, The same unpacking needs to happen in terms of what people believe and are thinking about themselves and about that aspect of life. And there's a whole Pandora's box we could open up in that. But you are correct. That's where the real key to becoming a powerful goal setter and the ability to not only in our own lives to get results, but to help other people get results is to really help them to unpack that part of their goal setting, if you will, every year.
Yeah, that's good. And that could be this, as you say that's probably the reason why
people join a club.
But so personally, right, the motivation has always helped me, but motivation can only take us so far because it creates like almost a roller coaster I've experienced of ups and downs. I'll stick with something and I'll go down because you can only hold on to motivation for so long. So that's why that's so cool that you said that. And we're talking about that's what's going to keep us on that scale.
See, most people are unconsciously motivated.
But
people who develop motivational intelligence become consciously motivated.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that they understand why they're moving the way they're moving, and they now understand if they're not moving the way they want to move, they can't just try to change their behavior. They have to change what they've come to think about that behavior or that aspect of their life. And when you and I move to that, you start having conversations with people around it. You start helping them unpack the way they think about certain things. Now they have the ability to begin to move from being unconscious to being conscious. And that's what creates intelligence. The word motivation is the impetus to do or not do, right? But intelligence has to do with application. It's about not just understanding I do or I don't do, although most people don't even realize that, but they don't have the ability to analyze it. They don't have the ability to really look at that and then know what to do about it. How do I change that? How do I this year, join a health club, and want to start to exercise and actually follow through on that? And if, some people, they join a club and they follow through on it.
Yeah.
But the reason is not because, they're better or not better than you and I. They have a different belief system about it. People who are struggling with it, they have a different belief about it. When you talk to people who really, truly are committed to working out and exercising, and you just have a conversation, and you and I train our mind's eye to not just say, what do you do? How do you work out every day? Which is where most of the conversation is. It's more of, look, we all live busy lives. I'm just curious, how do you get yourself to the club every day? And what you'll start to hear when you talk to people like that is they say, well, working out is, the most important thing that I do every day. If I can't take good care of myself, I can't take good care of other people in my life. They'll say things like that to you, but that means that they have a different belief about working out and taking care of themselves. They'll say things like, working out is the fountain of youth. They'll say things like, my body is what's that word? Is a sanctuary, there's all different things that they believe that causes them to really truly stay with that.
I don't know
that
if
aspect of life.
I don't know if this guy was serious, but it's so funny you say that. I unconsciously ask these questions, but I guess I'm consciously asking them because I'm curious. I'll be at the gym at a local club here, Midtown, and I'll ask that people that come in early, like 5, 6 a.m. the days that I go there. Then I'm like, what motivates you? What brings you? What are the reasons that you come here this early? Like, how do you do it? Like, what is it that makes you get out of bed? I literally asked them. I've asked probably 5 or 6 people that question, and one guy was really funny. He goes, "I do it so that I could eat pasta every day."
Yeah, absolutely, right.
So he was explaining on. He's like, I enjoy food, and I know that I can eat a little bit better, quote unquote, better,
right.
If I can, stay in my workout and stay healthier.
Yeah.
So that was cool, and that's really that's good stuff. So everybody, it's funny because everybody has to find their own beliefs, their own reasons, their own why, right?
That's right.
And that's really cool. And you said a bunch of them there.
Yeah. And so when you and I look at people that are getting a result that we want, their why is different than our why if we're not getting the result. You'll find a commonality, just like you'll find a commonality in process. you'll find a commonality in the why. They might articulate, like one guy might say, well, because I really love pasta and, I want to be able to do it. You could talk to someone else and say, I really love bread and that's why I work out. You know what I mean? So, but you'll see commonalities that exist. I used to, in running training classes throughout the years back when I would do that on a regular basis, I would help people understand that all success, when you and I see someone getting a result we want, it's not because of, they're better than us. It's just that they have a different process. They have a different thing that they follow through on every single day. I'd say, look, if you and I want to get better at physical fitness, you go read 2 or 3 books on physical fitness. By the time you get to the second, third book, you realize they all say, what? The same thing, right? That, we should, exercise a minimum of an hour a day, that, good 30, 45 minutes, depending upon which book, everybody has their own little spin to it, should be, aerobic exercises, we should eat a lot of protein and stay away from carbs and so, you should drink, this is a tough one, 5, 6, 7, 8 glasses of water every day, right? So there's a cause and effect that you see in people when you start studying health. Same thing with personal finances. A lot of listeners, right, they want to really, truly improve their personal finances. Well, if you go and read 2 or 3 books on personal finances, by the time you get to the second, third book, you realize what? They all say the same thing.
Yeah, it's all common.
If they're really written by people who've really actually gotten the result, they all say the same thing. Oh, if you want to get better at personal relationships, you read 2 or 3 books on personal relationships, a couple of articles. You get to the second book, third article, you realize they're all saying very much the same thing. The reason is because the universe is built on cause and effect. For every action, there's an equal and equivalent reaction. So if we do the right things every day, we're going to be successful. We can duplicate that result. But that's not the great divide. The great divide is not the process. The great divide is in the thinking that drives the process. The great divide is in the belief structure that the man or the woman has that is either unlocking them every day so they can execute on the process and the strategy, or that's stopping them. So if a man or a woman only sees themselves and believes that, I mean this respectfully, that they're, fat slob or, working out's not for me, it doesn't matter how much process and strategy they get. They're not going to do it. If someone believes that, I'm broke, I'm always going to be broke, it doesn't matter how much they read. It doesn't even matter how much income they make. I've coached people making $500,000, $1 million, multiple $1 million a year, and virtually still have more debt than they have in terms of assets and money. And the reason is because the underpinnings, they have the strategies down right. They're even executing, but the underpinnings on financial stability, financial strength, and eventually financial independence, those beliefs are all out of whack. So until you and I help them to see that and truly adjust that, it doesn't matter what strategies they're using. They're never going to use and adopt the right ones until they change their thinking.
Wow. That's gold. I have a feeling we're gonna have to. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this a few times myself. Half of me wants to be like, all right, let's start unpacking me and why I do this in my financials. Let's go. What are we doing here? Get a half of the therapy session here on the podcast.
Yeah, if you want the whole world to know.
All right, extreme vulnerability. Here we go. Wow. After all that, I'm like, where do we go next with this? Because that was good. That was awesome. What about in your relationship? What about in your life when you have somebody in it that, whether it's a good friend or even possibly your significant other, and I'm not in this stage of life yet, but maybe a kid that's older that just doesn't have that. Like you're that way, right? You've done this. You've went through this process, and you have your right beliefs that are creating all this. They create your right actions. They recreate your right results, or right, for yourself, those results. What if you have somebody that close to you that's not at all in that mindset? How do you suggest to navigate around that? How do you suggest to be around that person instead of constantly preaching to them or talk? You know what you do? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because that seems like a difficult thing.
And one that, virtually all of us, if we're out there living life every day, we all encounter. And, when we encounter that with people who are 2 or 3 steps out, in other words, if I have a client and the client is, really destructive, et cetera, I have the wherewithal and the freedom to fire the client, right? Same thing with friends. If, you and I befriend people in life, and if you really live in life, you befriend lots of different people. Sometimes they're just not good for you. They're not healthy for you. Doesn't mean that you're better than them. They're better than you. It just means that there's not a fit. So it's okay to extricate ourselves, step out of that. That permission, that awareness is very powerful and empowering for people to understand that we can remove people in our lives. But all of us also have families, and we have lots of people in our lives that could be lifelong friends, and we're having a rough patch or we're struggling, et cetera, or they had a few things happen to them, and, you really want to help them and you can't reach them. This is a common thing that, all of us run into. And I think that when you love people, when you really love them, I think it's even harder because you don't want to see them in pain and you don't want to see them in that self-battle. So you want to take a shortcut, especially when you have specialized knowledge. So you want to just tell them, don't think like that, think this way. But it doesn't work like that. So, so to answer your question, part of the key is, again, understanding that people's behavior, if it's destructive to themselves or the people around them, is to understand that you have to level set them. You have to kind of take them back and kind of rebuild the foundation of the house, rebuild the foundation of values and beliefs that either in their past has made them powerful and given them success in an area of life or in life. Or if you and I are with somebody and maybe it's not, a direct inner circle, but it's someone you really care about, really good friend. And as you've gotten to know them more, you're seeing they're being destructive in a certain area. The key is to have our mind's eye trained to be able to see that I could try to tell them, don't do it, don't do that, or stop doing that, or whatever. Or I might lead a conversation around other aspects of life and help them through those conversations without even saying it, to begin to realize that they don't quite think the same way in this area of life and they've been extraordinarily successful. Maybe they can take that thinking to other areas of life. So what I'm trying to say is that you can't help people until they're ready to be helped. And what makes them ready is when they kind of get level set in their thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, that was that's the answer.
Yeah.
That's my question. And I would say that even if we don't always have to help somebody, even if we feel inclined, there's no pressure on us. There's no, I mean, like, even if you are an expert at that or whatever. And one thing to shift.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so for example, a lot of times, like in coaching people, people at work even, or, even children, you have teen kids or kids in their 20s or maybe 30s, whatever. And, they're if the core of them is strong, is right, sometimes, really caring and really, if you're in a leadership role with them, the best thing you can do is actually disengage and, not abruptly, just disengage and let them kind of be on their own for a little bit to kind of realize that where they're at or what they're doing or how they're moving is not going to give them the future that they want. Many, many years ago, there was a movie called The Horse Whisperer. I don't know if you saw it. It was Robert Redford and that girl Johansson, who's famous now.
I know my wife watched it. I did not watch that movie.
But in that movie, he's talking. He's trying to break a horse that had a really bad accident, and the horse is just dangerous. And as he's beginning to train the horse to kind of level set the horse runs out into a field and it's kicking all over the place, very dangerous. And, he just stands there and eventually he kneels and then eventually he just sits there. And, it's at daytime and then all of a sudden it becomes nighttime and, it's in the middle of the night and I can't remember if it was still in the middle of the night or it was early morning. The horse kind of begins to meander over to him and then he slowly, stands up and puts his hand out and, I don't know, gave him a piece of grass or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the horse was calm again because, he understood that, the horse had to kind of get inside of its own head in order to kind of come back. So same is true with, people.
Sometimes you take that approach where you disengage, and then they figure it out, and they eventually come back.
Yeah, especially if they were a great horse to begin with.
Right. That's good. That's good stuff. Oh man. So I think how long have we been going for here? I'm curious.
Just under 45 minutes.
Just under 45? Okay. I'd keep them around 45 to an hour, so that's pretty good. What was the question? I had a good question that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, I apologize.
Joe.
I know you did.
No, it's okay. It's a lot of times I'll have a notepad down and jot my thoughts as people are talking. But because you get so engaged, you know what I mean? When you're talking to somebody, that's gone, and you're on to something new. But you've been helping, coaching, teaching this stuff for give me the amount of years exactly.
30 plus years.
30 plus years. Okay, like I said earlier. Are you still learning? Are you still a student?
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we, just like that powerful telescope, right? Every time they look out into space, they realize there's more space. They realize that there's more questions than there is answers. The same is true when people are placed on a journey, if you will, like my mentor put me on at 21 years old, a journey of self-actualization, right? A journey to become the best that I can be in life. And the interesting thing is, directly answering your question, is that every year, as much as I think I understand, with each year I realize how much I don't understand. So the journey of learning for me never ever ends. It's never ended. And some years, I will tell you, there's some easier lessons than other years.
Even to this day.
Because we're all human.
Yeah. That's cool. And I think that's really refreshing to hear for some people, whether you're like 20 years old and think you know it all, or 55 years old and think you know it all, or even 70. Heck, there's always something that we can learn and continue on with our journey. That's good stuff. So life always continues, right? We're never done. That's the beauty of it.
Well, everything in the universe is constantly evolving, right? The world itself is on an axis. It's always spinning and evolving. In nature, things are either growing or they're dying. There really is no such thing as stagnation. When things in nature stop growing, they actually begin to deteriorate, wither, and die. And it's the same for us in terms of our own life journey. When you and I stop learning, that's when we begin to wither. So learning is really, truly the most powerful underpinning for a life well lived.
Yeah, and learning can be just having a conversation with somebody new, reading a couple articles, the newspaper daily, that kind of things, right?
Absolutely.
That includes all that stuff, whether it's personal growth or just knowledge or whatever, right? That's in the ballpark of just constantly evolving and learning. Otherwise, we're dying, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Cool. Well, I'll end with this question I have for you. If you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself some advice or some words of wisdom, whatever, what would you say to yourself?
That's an excellent question. The first thing that comes to my mind, I kind of word association is patience. I would say to my 18-year-old self, patience. You don't have to have it all tomorrow, today, in any aspect of life. Things in life that truly are great are worth the wait. And the reason why the patience is so important is because in order for us to really have the bigger business, in order for us to really have the bigger marriage, in order for us to have the bigger friendships, in order for us to have the bigger relationships with our children, we have to become bigger as people. And the process of becoming bigger as people is the process of becoming, and that takes time. It takes time to have someone give you and I advice and then, move to take that advice and trip and stumble and fall. We skin our knees a lot when we become. We make mistakes every single day. But people who are on the journey of self to become all they can be, self-actualization, but keep it simple, just all we can be, we don't become all we can be by not, stumbling and falling and tripping. And but the key is to be patient and to be kind with ourselves and not judge ourselves, to look at these things every single day as either we're winning or we're learning. And both are every bit as valuable. Some of the biggest things that you and I will find in common of the most successful people in all aspects of life, any role in life, is many, many times they've had colossal failures, things that didn't work out so well. But what they always have in common is they were a learner. They didn't judge themselves. They didn't judge the people around them. They simply, truly looked at, what do I need to adjust? What do I need to adjust in my thinking? What do I need to adjust in terms of my movement? So patience is the first word that comes to my mind.
Awesome.
I think at 18, I understood the second word that comes to my mind, but I've come to really understand it, and that was dreams. Dreams really do come true, and they're important to have them. It's important at 18 to be a dreamer. And when you meet people that tell you, oh, no, you're just a dreamer, your response is, well, so what? Or the response is, yes, I am. Thank you very much. Because, the 18-year-old self sometimes might not really understand the value of our creative abilities, what they really are and what they really are signals of. Our creative abilities at 18, at 25, at 35, at 45, 55 is the very essence of our gift of life. You and I were given a gift, and that gift is the gift of life. But the very essence of the gift is our power to create. You and I have the power to create, to reimagine ourselves and who we want to be. We have the ability to look into the future and see what we want to do, what we want to have, who we want to become. And you and I also have the ability to make those dreams become reality. But if you and I at 18 don't understand the value of dreaming and don't write them down and put them all down on paper and then begin to move through life through a process of goal setting, life becomes very one-dimensional. Life becomes very limited. So I think, the advice to the 18-year-old is, good for you. You have those dreams. Be more stingy in writing them all down, because life is a wonderful place, a wonderful thing, and you can every single day recreate and achieve even more. So I think those are two big things.
Those are some of the best answers I've gotten from somebody when I asked that question.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think that advising myself as an 18-year-old, it's not an easy thing, to give advice to a young person because they haven't had enough life experience. Sure. So, my mentor used to say to me all the time, patience, Joe, be patient, or at other times he say, you're the most impatient person I've ever met, and, because I was so goal-directed and so driven, right? And so I think that's why those words come to mind.
Yeah. Well, you think 18, it's tough because your mind's in a different place. But if you were that 18-year-old that picked up a book and it said a few things in it that really resonated with you, you said it perfectly. That was great. That was awesome to hear. I like that. I think I'm going to tell my 35-year-old self that.
That's exactly
Thank
right.
you.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Well, there we go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Hey guys, one more thing before you take off. This is Motivational Intelligence Insider. It's just a very short, exclusive email every Monday that comes from Dave, John, and the guests on this show. This is the only place they share their very, very best stuff, and it's delivered right to your inbox every single Monday. This could include exclusive tips for upping your game, articles they're reading, videos they're watching, stories from the road, and on and on. It's the best way to kick off your week, and this content comes directly from Dave, John, and the guests, and is only available to subscribers of Motivational Intelligence Insider. So if you want these guys and gals to email you their best stuff, go to 2logical.com/insider. That's the number 2logical.com/insider and drop in your email. And if you do, I hope you enjoy.
The Motivational Intelligence Podcast is produced by the team at 2Logical. 2Logical is an international corporate training firm and the world's leading expert in motivational intelligence, which is the ability to understand, manage, and change the motives people have. 2Logical offers over 30 different keynotes, workshops, and full training courses to small, medium, and large Fortune 500 companies in 53 countries, a lot of which you're probably familiar with: Pfizer, Bank of America, GE, Constellation Brands, P&G, and more. All solutions are completely customized, and the feedback from these sessions will blow your mind. If you have any training or speaking needs or just want to say hey, head over to 2logical.com.